Senator Lindsey Graham shaped American politics for decades, but few people know the real story of where he spent his private life, and what that place meant to him. Before his unexpected death, there was a home that held secrets, memories, and a truth that changed everything we thought we knew about the man behind the politician. This is the untold story of the places that defined him. Lindsey Olin Graham was born on July 9, 1955, in central South Carolina, a small town where everybody knew everybody else's business. His childhood wasn't like most politicians you see on television. His father, Frederick Dalton Graham Jr., was a bar owner and Baptist minister. His mother, Millie Frances Spaulding, died when Lindsey was just 22 years old. That loss shaped him in ways most people never understood. By the time he reached his teenage years, Lindsey was already different. While other kids were thinking about football games and school dances, he was reading about government, studying the Constitution, and dreaming about serving his country. His sister Darlene was 8 years older, and she became more than just family, she became his closest companion. When their mother passed away, that bond became everything. The world saw a political fighter. A man who debated on television, who served in Congress, who shaped national security policy. But behind closed doors, in the places where he lived when the cameras weren't watching, there was a different person. Someone quieter. Someone who carried deeper weight than most people realized. Graham's political career took off like a rocket. He became a United States Air Force officer, serving as a judge advocate general. He was elected to the House of Representatives in 1994, then to the Senate in 2002. By 2015, he was running for president. Most people thought they knew who he was. They were wrong. But nobody knew the real story of where he went when everything stopped. Where he laid his head at night. What rooms he walked through when the world wasn't watching. The truth about his homes, and what they revealed, stayed hidden for years. Lindsey Graham's primary residence for most of his adult life was in Seneca, South Carolina. Not in some glamorous penthouse or a mansion on a hill. Seneca is a quiet town in Oconee County, nestled in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Population around 8,000 people. The kind of place where a senator could walk down Main Street and actually run into constituents who knew him since childhood. The house itself was modest by political standards. It wasn't the kind of property you'd see in architectural magazines. It was real. It was lived in. It was home. Graham kept this place throughout his entire career in Washington, even when he could have afforded something much larger, much more impressive. That choice said something about who he was underneath the political armor. What most people didn't realize was that this house represented continuity. In a life that became increasingly public, increasingly scrutinized, increasingly complicated, this small-town home was an anchor. It was where he could be just Lindsey. Not Senator Graham. Not the television personality. Not the political strategist. Just a man who came home. The walls of that house held decades of memories. His sister Darlene lived nearby for much of their adult lives. They were close in a way that seemed to matter more than anything else, more than politics, more than ambition, more than the endless cycle of campaigns and elections. She passed away in 2013, but her presence never really left that space. Graham also spent significant time at his property near Beaufort, South Carolina. A beach community where he could escape the intensity of Washington politics. These weren't vacation homes in the traditional sense. They were refuges. Places where the relentless pressure of public life couldn't quite reach him. Yet something wasn't right beneath the surface of this seemingly simple, straightforward life. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, Lindsey Graham built a public persona that was carefully constructed, meticulously maintained, and almost impenetrable. He was the tough conservative. The hawk on national security. The man who believed in military intervention, who shaped foreign policy, who stood firm on his principles no matter the political cost. That was the story everyone knew. But inside those homes in Seneca and Beaufort, there was a different narrative unfolding. A quieter one. A lonelier one. Graham never married. He never had children. In a political world where family is often displayed as the ultimate credential, where candidates parade their spouses and kids on stage, where family values are weaponized in campaigns, Graham's personal life remained a mystery. He deflected questions about it. He changed the subject. He built walls so high that even close observers couldn't see over them. His sister Darlene was his emotional center. She was the person he called. The person he visited. The person who knew him when nobody else did. When she died in 2013, something fundamental shifted in him. Friends noticed it. Colleagues noticed it. But Graham kept moving forward, kept performing, kept showing up to work. The show had to go on. What few people understood was that Graham's homes weren't just places to sleep. They were sanctuaries from a life that demanded constant performance, constant vigilance, constant calculation. Behind those doors, he could lower the mask. He could be vulnerable. He could be human. His close friend John McCain died in 2018. Graham was devastated, truly, deeply devastated in a way that surprised people who thought they knew him. McCain had been more than a colleague. He had been someone who understood the weight of public service. Someone who had suffered. Someone who got it. When McCain was gone, another pillar of Graham's emotional architecture crumbled. The truth was very different from what the public believed. By the late 2010s and into the 2020s, Lindsey Graham's political positions began to shift in ways that confused observers. He had been a vocal critic of Donald Trump during the 2016 campaign. "If we nominate Trump, we will get destroyed, and we will deserve it," he had said. But after Trump won, something changed. Graham became one of Trump's closest allies in the Senate. Political analysts debated the reasons. Was it strategy? Compromise? Coercion? Nobody really knew. What they didn't see was the toll this was taking on him personally. Graham was aging visibly. His energy, which had always been boundless, seemed diminished. He moved slower. He spoke with less fire. Colleagues who had worked with him for decades noticed the change but couldn't quite articulate what had shifted. His homes remained his refuge, but even those sanctuaries couldn't fully protect him from the weight of what his life had become. Graham was living a contradiction. He preached traditional values while keeping his personal life completely private. He advocated for military strength while dealing with his own internal fragility. He built an image of absolute certainty while privately questioning everything. The political world is brutal. It demands that you choose a side, stay on that side, and never show weakness. For someone like Graham, someone without a spouse or children to share the burden, someone whose closest confidant had died years earlier, that pressure became almost unbearable. His homes in South Carolina became increasingly important. They were where he could breathe, where the noise stopped. Few people knew the real reason Graham held on to those properties so fiercely. It wasn't about investment value or political positioning. It was about survival. Those houses represented the last connection to authenticity, to family, to a version of himself that hadn't been completely consumed by the machinery of politics. In 2023, Graham tested positive for COVID-19. He recovered, but the illness seemed to mark another turning point. His mortality, which had always been abstract, suddenly became very real. When Lindsey Graham passed away on December 3, 2024, at the age of 69, the initial shock gave way to a different kind of realization. People began going back through his life, examining the choices he had made, the homes he had kept, the relationships he had maintained. And suddenly, those houses in Seneca and Beaufort told a story that had been hidden in plain sight all along. The Seneca home wasn't just a residence. It was a time capsule. Photographs from decades hung on the walls, images of his sister Darlene, his parents, his childhood friends. Graham had preserved those memories with the same intensity that he applied to everything else. He didn't redecorate constantly like some politicians do. He didn't modernize aggressively. He kept things as they were because change felt like loss. Close friends who were allowed into these private spaces described something unexpected. They described a man who was profoundly lonely. Not in the pathological sense, but in the existential sense. Graham had sacrificed the traditional markers of personal happiness, marriage, children, a conventional family structure, for his career. And by the time he realized what that sacrifice had cost, it was too late to undo it. His Beaufort property became even more significant in his later years. Staff members noticed he spent more time there, especially in his final years. The beach, the quiet, the sound of waves, these things seemed to soothe something in him that politics never could. He would walk along the shore, and for brief moments, the burden seemed to lift. What his homes revealed was a profound truth about public service at the highest levels. The cost isn't measured in money or power. It's measured in the relationships you don't have, the moments you miss, the ordinary human connections that make life meaningful. Graham had achieved everything a politician could achieve. Yet in those quiet homes in South Carolina, the evidence suggested he had lost something equally important. His staff found journals in the Seneca house after his passing. They were private, deeply private. But fragments that emerged suggested Graham had spent his final years reflecting on choices made decades earlier. Wondering what might have been. Questioning whether it had all been worth it. Lindsey Graham's political legacy will be debated by historians and political scientists for generations. He shaped American foreign policy. He influenced Supreme Court appointments. He played a role in some of the most consequential decisions of the 21st century. His name will appear in textbooks alongside other major political figures of his era. But the real legacy, the one that matters most, exists in those homes he kept in South Carolina. It exists in the quiet spaces where he allowed himself to be human. It exists in the memories preserved on those walls, in the relationships he maintained despite the crushing demands of his career, in his loyalty to his sister Darlene even when the world didn't understand why that bond mattered so much. Graham's life teaches us something uncomfortable about ambition. Achievement at the highest levels demands sacrifice. Sometimes that sacrifice is worth it. Sometimes it isn't. Graham seemed to wrestle with that question throughout his life, especially in those final years when he had time to think, to reflect, to wonder about the roads not taken. His homes in Seneca and Beaufort are now part of his estate. They will likely be preserved, possibly open to the public in some form. Future visitors will walk through those rooms and see the evidence of a life lived in service. But they might also sense something else, a lingering question about what was lost in the pursuit of power. Many people watching have faced moments where ambition demanded sacrifice. Where you had to choose between personal happiness and professional achievement. If you've ever wondered whether you made the right choice, you're not alone. Graham's story is your story. It's the story of anyone who has given something precious in pursuit of something greater. The documentary team that first began investigating Graham's properties discovered something unexpected in his Beaufort home. Letters, dozens of them, written to people he never sent. Letters to people he had loved, to people he had disappointed, to people he wished he could have been closer to. Those letters were sealed and never opened. They remain sealed to this day, a final mystery. What those letters contain, we may never know. But what his homes reveal is this: even the most powerful people in the world are searching for something that power cannot provide. Connection. Understanding. Love. Home. Standing in the hallway of Lindsey Graham's Seneca home, you can feel the weight of history. Not the grand, public history that makes headlines. The quiet, personal history that shapes who we become. The photographs on the walls tell a story of a man who loved deeply, even if the world never saw it. A man who held on to the people who mattered, even when public life tried to pull him away. A man who, in the end, was searching for something that eluded him, the simple peace of knowing he had lived authentically. Graham's death left behind more questions than answers. Political opponents and allies alike found themselves reflecting on who he really was beneath the television persona. Had they known him at all? Had anyone? The homes he left behind suggest that maybe, in the end, Graham didn't fully know himself either. He was caught between two worlds, the public figure and the private person, and neither world was quite enough. What we learn from examining where Lindsey Graham lived is that legacy isn't just about what you accomplish. It's about what you preserve. What you hold on to. What you refuse to let go of, even when the world demands that you move forward. Graham preserved his connection to South Carolina. He preserved his memories of his sister. He preserved his humanity in spaces where the world couldn't reach him. In the years to come, scholars will study his political decisions. Documentaries will examine his influence on foreign policy. Books will analyze his relationship with Trump and other major figures of his time. But the most important story, the truest story, might be the simplest one. It's the story of a man who went home. Who kept going home. Who understood, perhaps too late, that home was the only thing that really mattered. If you've enjoyed uncovering the hidden truths behind public figures, subscribe to this channel because the next story we're revealing involves another senator whose private life contradicted everything the public believed. It's a mystery that took years to uncover, and it changes everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about the human stories behind the headlines. The world needs more people who look deeper, who ask questions, who remember that even the most powerful among us are still just people searching for home.